Look at your age right now. Hold the number in your head. Whatever it is, 22, 35, 51. Now picture being dropped, exactly as you are, into a human body 40,000 years ago. Same age, same you. Here is the uncomfortable question almost nobody asks honestly. At your exact age, would you already be dead? You've probably heard the famous line that ancient humans only lived to about 30. It is almost completely wrong. The truth is darker and stranger, because death back then didn't come for everyone at the same time. It came in waves, at specific ages, and each wave had its own way of killing you. By the end of this, you'll know the exact point on the timeline where your own life most likely would have ended. And once you see your age sitting on that map, you can't unsee it. I'm Nerlin, and I went down this rabbit hole for an entire weekend, expecting a quick myth-buster, and came out a little shaken about my own birthday. So let's build the timeline from the beginning. And the beginning is brutal. First, let's kill that number, because understanding why it's wrong is the whole key. Life expectancy at birth is just an average. If one twin dies at birth and the other lives to 70, their average lifespan is 35, but nobody actually died at 35. That's exactly what happened with our ancestors. The 30 was never the age people died. It was a shadow cast by all the babies who never got to grow up, dragging the average into the basement while the survivors quietly went on to old age. So we throw the average away and walk the timeline year by year. And the first stretch is the deadliest of your whole life. Here's the part that surprises everyone. The single most dangerous day of a prehistoric life was the day you were born. According to research by anthropologists Michael Gervin and Hilary Kaplan, who compiled mortality data across living hunter-gatherer groups, somewhere around a quarter of all infants died before their first birthday. Sit with that. 1 in 4 never saw a single year. And the killing didn't stop there. Across these populations, only somewhere between 57 and 67% of children born made it to age 15. Flip that around, and roughly 4 out of every 10 people who were ever born died as children. Not from violence, mostly. The biggest killers were the unglamorous ones. Gut infections, diarrhea, a chest cold, a bad stomach bug, the kind you'd shrug off today with fluids and a day in bed, was a coin flip with death. So here's your first checkpoint and your first comment. If you're watching this, you already cleared the hardest level of the entire game. You survived childhood. Tell me in the comments how old you are right now, because we're about to find out how much further you'd have gotten. And the next stage came for one group in particular. Let's say you made it. You survived the gauntlet. You're an adult now. For young men, this was actually one of the safer windows, apart from the risks of hunting and the occasional spear in a dispute. But for young women, reaching this age opened a door into something genuinely terrifying. Childbirth. This is where it gets dark. Human beings are cursed with what scientists call the obstetric dilemma. We walk upright, which narrowed the pelvis, and at the same time we grew enormous heads to hold those big, clever brains. So giving birth to a human is about the most dangerous thing a mammal can do. In living forager groups that researchers have actually measured, the numbers are staggering. Among the Ake of Paraguay, maternal deaths run at roughly 670 for every 100,000 births. Among the Hadza of Tanzania, over 1,000. In a wealthy country today, that figure is around 10 to 20. And a woman back then wasn't rolling those dice once. She might give birth 6, 7, 8 times, each one another spin of the wheel. The years between 15 and 40 weren't a woman's safest decades. They were a long, repeated gamble with her own life on the table. So now we get to the question you actually came here for. If you cleared childhood and the dangers of early adulthood, what age would the timeline finally catch up with you? The answer flips everything you thought you knew. Because if you survived to age 15, you did not have 10 or 20 years left. You had decades. The same researchers found that a 15-year-old in these groups could expect to live, on average, to around 52. Push on to 45, and you typically have another 12 to 24 years in the tank. The most common age of death for adults who made it through, what scientists call the modal age, wasn't 30 or 40. Across these groups, it lands between 68 and 78 years old. 72 is a fair number to carry in your head, and that is not a typo. A Stone Age human who dodged the early bullets had a very real shot at their 70s, sometimes outliving people in far more recent, far dirtier centuries. Personally, I think this is the most overturned fact in our entire story. We picture our ancestors as worn-out husks at 35, when the ones who made it were gray-haired elders watching their grandchildren grow. And that word, grandchildren, is the key to the whole mystery. Here's a question worth dropping in the comments. Why would evolution let humans live for decades after they stop having children, when almost no other animal does? The answer is the grandmother. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes, working with the Hadza, watched older women out-forage everyone, digging the deep tubers young mothers and small kids couldn't reach and feeding the grandchildren. Those extra mouths meant more babies survived. So long life wasn't a luxury our ancestors stumbled into. Old age was a survival tool, and the elders were the reason the rest made it at all. So let's finally put your number on the map. If you're in your 20s or 30s, congratulations! You are squarely in the prime of a prehistoric life. A hunter, a forager, a parent, fully load-bearing with a strong chance of decades still ahead. If you're in your 40s or 50s, you would not be elderly and you would not be finished. You'd be an elder in the truest sense. A living library of weather and tracks and faces, the most valuable person at the fire. And if you've made it past 60, you would be rare, genuinely rare, but you would absolutely exist. One of the old ones, the keeper of stories, proved to everyone younger that a human could last that long. So at what age would you already be dead? For most people watching, honestly, you wouldn't be. Not yet. The deadly part was never the age you are now. It was getting here at all. And that completely reframes what modern life really gave us. We tend to say medicine and clean water made us live twice as long, but we didn't stretch the far end of life. The maximum human lifespan has barely moved. The elders of the Stone Age reached their 70s and 80s just like your great-great-grandparents. What we actually did was disarm the early traps. We pulled the babies back from that 1 in 4 cliff. We made childbirth survivable. We turned a deadly stomach bug back into a day off work. We didn't add a second life onto the end. We just stopped losing so many people at the start. The average leapt from 30 to 80, not because we invented old age. Our ancestors already had it. We finally let almost everyone reach it. So go back to that number you were holding when this started, your age. For nearly all of the human story, the fact that you're alive to even hear that number wasn't a given. It was a gauntlet, and roughly half the people who ever started the race didn't finish the part you already have. We traded a world where death came early and at random for one where it waits, politely, until the very end. We made dying old the normal thing instead of the rarest prize a life could win. I'm not going to pretend that's not progress, but I will admit I look at my own birthday differently now. It used to feel like a number counting down. Now it feels like a finish line my ancestors mostly never got to cross. So here's what I genuinely want to know, down in the comments. What age are you? And at what age did the people in your own family tend to live to? Your grandparents, your great-grandparents? Because somewhere back up that line, every single one of them beat odds that would terrify us. I'm Nerlin. See you in the next one.